hitting a pawn and hoping that he can come up with a second wave of attack potentially. As we see Division 1, the fourth game about to begin, Robert, we do see Magnus switch strategies. It's the Reti opening as he brings his knight out.
And I was wondering if he'd play in English. He says, David, your guess is not going to be correct this time either. But we have a slower approach on the left-hand side from Magnus Carlsen. And I'm looking at the right-hand side. I mean, that game is really tactical. And Denis Lazovic down under a minute. He's such a tenacious defender. We did just see him win a game that was just truly absurd, checkmating Wesley So, who blundered mate and won. But as we look at the live board on the right-hand side, David, I mean, that white king, it may not be that much longer for the board if Denis makes a single mistake.
Yeah, Denis Lazovic, he won the unwinnable position just one game ago, but he's going to have to do it all over again. The eval bar on the right side of your screens, it might say level, but very much Wesley So having all the fun. And Magnus Carlsen, Alireza Fruja, no fireworks on that board. In the early stages, Robert, we see a double fianchetto. Magnus putting both of his bishops on the longest diagonal. I'm going to say he's half a boy there. And yeah, that game yet to warm up.
No, this is just black taking control of the center. White can strike with a move like pawn to d4 to challenge that center, but nothing major, at least at the moment. And we now have, all right, it's half like B3 Cowboy, half in English, David. So we're both kind of right?
I'm going to say we're both fully right there. We knew Magnus's strategy at least. We might not have got the move order correct, but move order, schmooth order. I mean, here, it's just a very, very tense position. It's almost a reverse Sicilian, a close Sicilian where, the tension at least will be pushed until the middle game.
Okay, so these two are going at it. We still see the early stages, trying to figure out an exact plan. And I just want to quickly go back to our view of the second division because that one started, can see that board, things are fizzling out. So Denis with great defense for now, because there could still be an attack against his king. But now we're in even material, David. So the piece has been restored, and that might mean Armageddon in Division 2.
Armageddon very likely now, imminent almost. And it's not just because Denis has given back the piece, but also because he's got stuff off the board. White's king now still looks a bit awkwardly placed in the corner, but black simply doesn't have enough ammunition to attack it. So still, I would say Wesley So slightly with the upper hand. The game might continue for a while, but Armageddon definitely a big favorite. So we will update everyone for sure if any twists and turns appear, Robert, just as the Black Queen dives in. I wouldn't relax yet if I were Denis Lazovic.
It is impossible to relax, like in that position on the right-hand side, because Denis has 20 seconds, and there are all sorts of threats. So these games, I mean, we see on the left-hand side, early going, on the right-hand side, late stages, and maybe the queens come off, and then we can note that these players will likely make a draw with just the remaining material on the same side of the board, so the bishops can't flex their might. But Wesley, he may be thinking for more, David. He is keeping those queens on. Can he actually find a path forward?
Ooh, Wesley, he is showing a bit of frustration that he's even at this point. Bit of a shake of the head there as well on the camera from Wesley. So now might be the perfect moment to bail out with a draw. Black's queen can yo-yo up and down the board, giving checks. And no, he keeps playing on. Wow, Robert, that game, I'm going to say it's going to be a draw. But yeah, in the meantime, Magnus Carlsen and Alireza Fruja, it is Magnus finally occupying the center, finally trying to put pressure on Alireza Fruja here.
And we see a strike, as you call out, for Magnus Carlsen. And we probably should see a draw, but it's hard to take our eyes off the match on the right-hand side, given that Denis Lazovic's under 10 seconds. But Magnus, he plays d4, Alireza in for a think, and this match has been very different than their first, David. When they played each other a few days ago, both players were a bit below 85% accuracy because the positions were so sharp that perfect calculation was impossible. Now these players are each above 97%. That's what they're averaging. So we see a totally different style the second time around between them.
Yeah, I've got to say, it's a very mature style from Fruja today. It's not what I expected. Normally he drags his opponents down with him in terms of accuracy, but very cagey stuff. And Denis Lazovic had a winning advantage there, Robert, just for one moment.
That a pawn. I mean, we didn't think it would play a part in this game, but suddenly it's deep in the end game, and that could be an advantage. So there must have been a one move opportunity that was overlooked because both players down under 5 seconds. And we keep saying could be a draw, should be a draw. But now, if we get opposite color bishops, I think at long last, the players can recognize that this game is over. There is no life left. So a draw is going to be the result between Lazovic and Wesley. So there it is done. And that means Armageddon with bidding in Division 2.
They go again. They have to find even more energy after so many epic fights. But Division 2, the title yet to be confirmed. So in one where we do see this clash and just high quality, high accuracy, call it what you will, Robert. It definitely feels like Alireza, he's trying to fight Magnus on Magnus's terms. He's showing he can hang in the end game. He can apply some pressure here and there. This position, though, what do you make of it in this fourth encounter?
It seems like relatively standard fare at the moment, where black has this d6 pawn, which can be a target, and white has this bind. It's not the Marazzi bind, but c4 and e4 pawns, making sure that black cannot easily break in the center. And queen c8, I think Magnus's only move, put that in air quotes, king h2, that keeps a slight edge for white. It's pretty obvious. I would be surprised if he plays something else here, David, because that pawn is directly under attack.
Yeah, not too much choice, and there we go. Magnus didn't think too long about defending it. The one thing that made him hesitate potentially is the idea of a knight jump. Knight g4 check would, wow, it is played actually before I have to highlight anything. I was going to say it would result in a trade. Black's bishop pounces and snags a knight in the center. It's level material, but white has an awkward pawn on g4. The downside for Firouzja, however, with that little transition is that the d pawn that you mentioned a few moments ago, Robert, is easier to attack now. Who do you think this little tactic has favored? Alireza jumping on the opportunity, but is it going to backfire?
Well, objectively, white is doing pretty well, but I feel like Alireza, he wants a messier position. As I was just talking about, that in the first time that these two played, it was a match win for Magnus, but they both were below 85% average accuracy. Here, they're well above that at 97 plus. So for Alireza, he may think of playing bishop e5 here to induce pawn to f4, and only then bring his bishop back, saying your king on h2 may not be the safest piece, but that can backfire, right? Giving white more control, more space, although overextension, that may be a later worry. In the moment, it seems like white is happy to launch those pawns forward.
That's right. White, for now, can protect everything, assuming the bishop drops back. I'm not sure which square, but for example, in front of its own king, as he's just played. Magnus now has a choice. Does he grab that d pawn? It is eternally weak, though, so maybe no rush. Or does he simply protect his king side? It does look a bit ugly pushing pawns in front of your own king, but there we go. I think Magnus making a good decision. This pawn structure does look slightly awkward, but it does keep white's king safe for now. And Magnus will likely at some point try to double up rooks on the d-file against this backward pawn, this big weakness, this target. I'm not sure which pieces he wants to exchange, but if he drops his knight back at some point, if the dark squared bishops ever disappear, note that the black king doesn't have many defenders around it. So I would definitely pick white right now, but it's not too dramatic here for Firouzja, Robert.
Oh, he's holding on quite nicely. Rook a to d8, bishop back to c8. You can put that bishop back on its starting square to make sure your d6 pawn is defended. So queen d2 is played, and now there is direct pressure. And I think that white is ready to pick up that pawn. So his bishop f8, that looks too ugly. I might even just lose on the spot because you're opening up the black king. That whole diagonal is open. So David, process of elimination, bishop e5, I say with no certainty whatsoever, but I'm trying to induce your pawn push to f4, and then of course I drop the h6 pawn. So there were no good options, but look at Alireza playing the best move, giving up d6. We both like our material. Is it a pawn that you want to grab for Magnus?
Oh, I know. I would love to grab it. I think I would spend a minute or two at least calculating whether to take this pawn. But once the queens disappear, white suddenly lacks control over the queen side. And I guess black's idea is to strike while possible with the move a4. So, for example, maybe if we bring up an analysis board to show what would happen if Magnus were to choose, he chooses instead to drop his knight back, keeping queens on the board, Robert, because now a4 far less scary while the queen is around, and the bishop tension maybe favoring white if those pieces leave the board.
Can I ask you a question? Instead of queen d2 a few turns ago, because bishop e6 was a very nice reply, I'm just wondering what the best move was for white. And it probably is going to be something that's out of the immediate thought process. Rook d2, queen d2, trying to get on the d file. I mean, I can look as well. What was the best move there? Knight e2
Robert,
or what else?
Yeah, I think you're right. I've taken a peek as well, and knight e2, he would pretty much get the same position as the game, but he's wasted a move. If now after knight to e2, the bishops get traded, white has basically played queen d2 and then had to go back to b2, so has lost a clear tempo. So it's small things. That shows at this level, I mean, the players are playing natural moves, but it's such small incremental gains. It's not about tactics. It's not about instant wipeouts, instant kind of knocking out your opponent. It's just, okay, I might gain a tempo here, might gain a tempo there, might gain a square. And yeah, it's cagey, Robert. But I'm looking at the clock. Firouzja doesn't seem too comfortable down by 3 minutes.
Well, he's really uncomfortable because he's got no active plans. And this is a strategic choice from Magnus. He went knight e2 now. It was a move late, but you see that knight can hop forward to f4, to d4. Those pawn breaks that Alireza desperately wants to play with success, I think they do typically backfire. It's a little bit too soon. So what to do here for Alireza? I just am not loving this position. I've always hated these from the black side.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of a King's Indian defense. I know it got there by means of a transposition, a type of English opening in the early stages, but yeah, I've hated these two my whole career, Robert. I play these from the white side more often just because I like the space, and the nightmare scenario, I think in chess in general, right, is lacking a plan. If you don't have a plan, if you don't see any tactics, what to do, it's really uncomfortable just kind of putting your pieces back and forth, queen e7, just wait, sit, and hope that your opponent doesn't have a way to improve and come forward at you. But definitely Firouzja right now, burning even more time on the clock, and I just feel he's uncomfortable. It's not his type of position. White will soon, if we catch up, with the current position. My bad, we had a couple of moves there very quickly, and wow, black definitely struggling, suffering for space.
Yeah, I mean, not much has changed in the sense of the overall picture where a few moves come in, but white has all of the control here. Black's rooks, if they double in the d-file, that's a very short line for them. On the other hand, white's rooks, they're staring all the way into black's position at the pawn on d6. So yeah, black is just trying to curl up in a ball and defend. White is having fun. And note the a5 pawn is within the queen's sights. So if you ever move that rook from a8, then you may drop a pawn. So I'm going to quickly note that the Armageddon match in Division 2 is underway. Denis Lazovic, Wesley So. This is a really big match for the Oslo finals in December. But in this game, Lazovic bid 7 minutes, David. Very confident with his ability to hold from the black side, giving a 3-minute time advantage to Wesley, who needs to win. And I think Wesley's saying, oh, sorry, do I need to win this game? I'm going to sacrifice a bishop and go for checkmate immediately.
Wow, Wesley, he's really turned it on today. I'm really impressed, I've got to say. The first game of the day, a bit of a bore draw, but ever since, Wesley's been throwing everything he has at Denis Lazovic, and Denis has withstood most of the pressure. Yes, a bit of luck along the way, but Wesley's been going all-out attack, and look at this, the Black King open, Wesley with 3 extra minutes. Yeah, it's exactly the dream type of scenario for Armageddon. Just go all in. That's what you have to do. And Robert, he might be rewarded for his courage, Wesley.
Wesley playing like a boss. We know how well he did in the CCT finals a year ago. He beat Magnus Carlsen in an Armageddon game. He played a vicious attack and was able to take down the world number 1. And right now, Denis Lazovic has his hands full. All of White's pieces staring in the direction of the Black King. I don't see him surviving, but we will update everybody if and when a result comes in. But let's go back to our top board because, David, things are looking fantastic for Magnus Carlsen right now. I mean, every single move with purpose, and black is stuck shuffling around.
Yeah. Firouzja losing his patience. I was about to say it's really uncomfortable for black, but ultimately here, his knight is attacked, and where to jump to? I see tricks, I see real pitfalls in black's future here, Robert. If he jumps back with his knight, white could land tactics such as knight to f5. There would have been nasty pins along the e-file. Instead, knight's on the rim, looking pretty dim. Grim, you name it right now. That is the wrong direction. A question mark given to that move. And Robert, it might soon be time for white to go all out and switch play to the other flank, to the king side.
It looks very tempting to go and do that. And if you could imagine the white king being elsewhere, a rook on the h-file may be deadly, as the black king will be opened up. But that's a faraway dream. And for now, what Alireza may be relying on is some c5 idea from black. Can I finally gain some space for my pieces? Please let me attack something. So I'm wondering for Magnus at this moment, can he play a move like b5? Is that too risky? I mean, he's attacking the knight, but maybe he's opening up files in good ways for Alireza.
I like it too. That was the first move that drew my attention as well, Robert. And I think Magnus will be calculating the direct methods, whether it's in the center, kingside. I mean, we talk about space. We've talked about that. Well, I have at least a lot today. And I mean, look at these pawns. Just all of the options. That's the one downside for Magnus. Too much choice, perhaps. And he does go for b5. We cannot blame him there. Maybe not the most accurate move, but putting Firouzja under immediate pressure, white maintaining the advantage, of course. And now things have changed. You mentioned open lines. Still, it is the d6 pawn that's the big target. And I'm just wondering how white reacts to his weakness on c4. At least black now has something to hope for, Robert, despite only having 1 minute on the clock.
That was my exact concern. I forgot for a moment the rook was on e2 rather than d2, because then this would look even more powerful. But for the moment, black can put pressure on c4. Maybe rook d4. It's an odd-looking move, but it does defend that fourth rank. And for Alireza, he's down to 1 minute 6 seconds, David. And this is a very difficult position to find ideas in. And as you mentioned, all those white pawns on the fourth rank, one of them may push. And he gives up c4 because he wants d6.
Wow, Magnus showing just his intentions there. Aggressive intentions. He's giving up a pawn. It does fall with a hit on the white queen. I'm not sure where the white queen will slide. Most natural square, I would say maybe e3 or f3. But yeah, he's zoned in now on the d6 square. Eval Bar doesn't approve, but Magnus, he's talked about bluffing before. This was actually given a double question mark, Robert. That's not me. That's the engine, because black can break out. But how difficult is that with 45 seconds on the clock?
I think d5 is a move that Alireza will, and there he finds it, but I don't think it's the end of the story. I mean, for Magnus, he needs to keep his composure. We've seen him in previous games when he overlooks something. He's like, what's wrong with me? How am I missing that kind of stuff? But the good news for Firouzja is queen c5 is on the docket. If he can get those queens off the board, no longer are we talking about any sort of checkmate, and black is a pawn ahead thanks to his latest capture on c4. So this is a moment where Magnus needs to be a bit careful. And okay, we are seeing e5. The white knight can slide back to d4 in most of these positions, David. So it's still advantage Magnus.
Still advantage Magnus on board and clock, but do not underestimate Alireza, despite having 30 seconds. Yeah, I think we've all known his bullet prowess for years now. He's had some fantastic results. He seems to up his game, Robert, with no time, and now trying to trade knights. Very wise. The black knight might jump back to the defense if need be, towards the king side, if allowed. Really key that white cannot jump into the d6 square, because black can simply snap that knight off. There's a pin along the e-file. Magnus, he's running out of ideas here. I really think he missed this d5 move from afar, and I would probably advocate for dropping the knight back, but black's got a pawn to suffer for. Black's definitely in this fight.
Knight d4, a really tempting first move. Knight d6, as you mentioned, not available. Rook takes d6. That would be a free piece. Knight takes c7, and then bishop takes d5 afterwards. That is something that Magnus can go for if he feels like there will be some winning chances at the end there. I mean, white's pawn structure on the king side, it still is quite advanced, but that can backfire because it could leave his king open. So the time advantage is also being cut into because Magnus knows how consequential this single move will be.
Yeah, I don't like it. I just really feel that Magnus has lost control, and this is a cautionary tale about rushing. Black had no space, had no plans, and Magnus has basically forced Firouzja to find some good moves, and he's going for that latter option you mentioned, Robert, but once the dust settles, once everything is traded off, it's your other point, the fact that the white king might be vulnerable from behind on the second rank, and Magnus is pretty much committed to trying to checkmate black now, otherwise this all might start to collapse for white.
still a bit scary for Alireza. Like f takes e5, rook takes e5 might already be the beginning of the end for Firouzja, because the queen and rook line up very nice in the e file. And if you can't take on e5, is that queen going to come up to d4 next, trying to do the same thing? So the queen steps forward, but 20 seconds remaining, David, for Firouzja, and there are plenty of options here for Magnus to keep things complicated.
Yeah, Firouzja keeps finding fantastic moves, though. I think his plan might be simple, to even just capture this pawn. And as long as the black king hides on the 7th rank, the rook will protect against any checks on it. And if he takes this pawn, the white king will no longer have the safe hiding spot of h3. So suddenly, again, those checks might come back to bite white. Wow, Firouzja, he definitely plays best with 1 minute on his clock, Robert. It's crazy how he keeps finding the best move every single time, despite the enormous pressure on him.
And I'm just looking for Magnus for ways to play for a win, and it might actually cause him to lose the game. So be really careful at this current turn. He plays queen d3. I was thinking rook d6, but I realized the a2 pawn was also hanging with check. So he keeps the rook defended. As you're pointing out, g6 is loose. And 12 seconds for Firouzja. He makes a mistake here, but what is the knockout? e6?
Oh, that is so difficult, e6, Robert. We're both reacting because that is almost superhuman. Pawn to e6. It's due to the fact that the black queen is tied down defending her g-pawn, that she cannot go and grab that. And if white can establish a strong passed pawn, that might just overwhelm the black army. There's no checks. c2 is covered right now. The black queen can check. The white king will slide, and Magnus finds it. He finds the key move. He's winning.
Of course he does. Magnus Carlsen found the key defense. Now he finds what should be a winning move, but still difficulty ahead. Quick note that Wesley So did defeat Denis Lazovic in that Armageddon game. He wins Division 2 and the big prize there. But come on, David, what's going on here? How should white proceed? Because e6 is loose. And f5? He's just thrown all his pawns forward.
Wow, brilliant from Magnus Carlsen. He knows he needed to cut the black queen's communication with the e6 pawn. Now he can slowly, surely advance this pawn forward. First he gives a check. I was going to say eliminate the black rook. There we go. Maybe not the most accurate, but still winning. And once the black rook is traded, it's the e-pawn that will crown Magnus's glory. And it's just one check. The white king will hide. I'm not sure which square. But Robert, he's on the brink now.
And you see that it's not about the pawn quantity, but the quality. The e6 pawn about to become on the 7th rank. Can he just go e7, or should he trade rooks first with queen d7 to follow?
Ooh, both look very tempting. Magnus with 25 seconds now. Alireza with just 2 seconds on the clock. My first inclination would be to trade rooks, just because I'm scared of a counterattack against the white king. But Magnus, he could well be tempted to push first. Still, just 2 squares away from touchdown, 2 moves away from glory, potentially. Can he trade queens, Robert? Queen to d7, queen to d8 look tempting. You don't want to allow any counterplay, but with queens off, there we go.
Ooh, nice try from Firouzja. 5 seconds from Magnus as well. He's in time trouble all of a sudden, and if the queens are traded, the black king is in time, so he plays g4, which is a great move. And how Alireza proceeds, I think you can even trade queens, but there's the outside pawn. Wow.
Wow, a few seconds each. Magnus reacts. Has he missed this move? There's going to be a bunch of checks. White is still winning, but Magnus doesn't realize the white king has to run, sprint forward.
He's chosen the wrong square. Yeah, f2 comes with check. The king goes back to e2, but that was a mistake. Every single obvious-looking move is wrong.
Wow, Alireza had a draw by a miracle there. We'll show that later, hopefully. But Magnus now, the king is going to run behind enemy lines to seek safety. If the checks dry up, white wins. White makes a second queen with check, and it's over. I think we're going to see the last few moves of this grand final of the Julius Baer Generation Cup, Robert.
Oh, only a few checks remain. The white king has snaked out and is helping to promote a new pawn. This has been incredible, David. First, he saves that endgame, that finding that the king could hide in the corner, and now he finds that his king can hide behind enemy lines, and the checks are running out.
Oh, be careful, don't step forward, you would lose the game. Magnus would have been checkmated if he'd walked forward to the f7 square. Now he's zigzagging his way back to safety, but maybe I called it too soon. It's not yet over. He's yet to find the safe haven for his king. He needs to hide behind the black b pawn, potentially. He needs to get in and back and use that pawn as a shield.
And it's almost like checkmate against that white king over there, but it cannot be caught, and the king is doing exactly what you said, David. It is running to the other side. You don't get a new queen for that, but you will get a new queen when that pawn successfully goes to e8, but the checks have continued.
Wow, the checks have continued, but no more, and Magnus Carlsen wins on time, wins the Generation Cup. It was a king walk. It was close. Magnus, a sigh of relief on his face, Robert. but a deserved winner in the end after an epic battle.
There is so little that separates these two, but when it came down to the critical moments, it was Magnus Carlsen who found the